Let's look at the bugs in 26.1 Snapshot 3. There's only a couple blocks that support sugarcane. There were really only 3, so we can't place sugarcane on red sand anymore. This is bug 305,708, introduced in 26.1 Snapshot 3. This one mentions red sand. It also applies to suspicious sand. You can see how they reworked the logic. Originally, it checked against 2 different JSON files, dirt.json and sand.json. Now it checks against support sugarcane JSON, which still checks against dirt.json, but only checks against the block of sand, not against sand, red sand, and suspicious sand. They also updated the detection of water and frosted ice. These are in their own separate tags now. Fluid tags support sugarcane adjacently, and block tags support sugarcane adjacently. It's pretty easy to fix this with a data pack. Hopefully Mojang catches it. This is a new zombie holding a spear in the very last snapshot. This is a new zombie holding a spear in the latest snapshot. Do you see the difference? This is where it starts to fall apart. There is more going on. In the old armed entity render state, we see that state.mainArm was always getting set to the main arm, which typically is the right arm. See how living entity leaves this abstract? This has an implementation in mob, which is a superclass of the zombie. Unless the entity is set to be left-handed, it should default to the right arm. Let's look at how it changed. Now we have attack arm, which starts as humanoid arm right. Then we check against swinging arm. Swinging arm begins as null. It's not set in the constructor, and it's even checked against being null in other places. And we check if a possibly null value is equal to the main hand. While this is null when we first spawn the entity, it hasn't swung an arm, so we default to the else of this ternary statement. So we end up getting the item stack from the left arm instead. And then we get the animation for the item in the left arm, which would be no animation. Since I'm working with Neoform right now, we can actually edit this directly. Then we could generate patches or run the code as it is in the workspace. I'm going to do an ugly solution here and literally just check if it is null. Now I get a warning saying that this is always false, but I don't think that's accurate. The bug report stated that this issue reoccurs when you reload into a world. Gonna get rid of this guy, summon a new one just to be sure. Summon him in. Oh, would you look at that? Now it seems like he's holding it properly. I'm in the last snapshot. Gonna summon a Zoglin and a cow. The Zoglin attacks the cow. In the latest snapshot, if you try to do the same, the Hoglins will pathfind to a cow and then basically just keep following them around, but they're not attacking. The votes here have already gone up since I've been looking at this. Hoglins and Zoglins no longer attack, also introduced in the latest snapshot. Basically, it took me an hour to get to this point. This is the old behavior builder class. It's basically just a one-liner here. For the most part, I'm doing the exact same thing with this create line, but I'm wrapping around it and basically ensuring that the memories get added properly. At a deeper level, we can try to compare it to piglins. We check out the different brain provider implementations. We see that for the piglin, it's using memory types and sensor types. For the Hoglin, it's only using sensor types. These provider calls may seem similar as well, but we see this first one passes an empty list, which is immutable, so non-modifiable. So one inference we can make here, it seems like Mojang is moving towards auto-registration, or making memories into components in a sense. The sequence call we looked at creates a memory. The memory attempts to trigger, but the original memory wasn't registered properly, so it would return null. This one took a little while. You can see if I spawn a cow in, the Hoglins are going to attack it now. No real cows were harmed in the making of this video. Do you see the issue? Let me highlight these lines, and this is what grow crops looks like. I can stand here for a long time, but I'm never going to get a melon. It doesn't matter how long I stand here. Unless I till that, I cannot get melon. Melons and pumpkins do not grow if the block adjacent to the stem is anything but farmland. We check out the usages of this tag. It also gets used in the regular crop block, so we really need a separate tag for the fruit. We also have a pretty weird data path here where we see supports melon stem. We check out that file, it points to support stem crops. That file points to supports crops, and that file allows farmland. Pretty weird sequence we have here. We could also say that the main issue is stem block doesn't have a separate support for the fruit of the block. It only has a tag for support blocks for the main stem. Going further, you could say fruit blocks in a sense like melons or pumpkins should implement their own can survive behavior, but they don't. It just registers a normal block. Since it's a normal block, we can't reference its survive behavior. So what I would do is a completely separate tag, supports melon fruit. That way we have separate tags for stem and fruit, and probably do the same for pumpkins. This is an easy fix, but not just with data. This one's going to be a couple bugs in one, because we're looking at issues with the new world options and the new access for the game rules via a screen. So I have my world open to land. So that means even though I'm paused, you still see things moving in the background. The game is still being updated. We can go to options, then world options. This is the interface we see. We can change the difficulty, and we can edit game rules. And there's a button that simply says done. It doesn't say save and edit or save and close. It doesn't say save, but most people I think would likely assume that, okay, this finishes what I was doing. But if we change this, everything behind us just instantly despawned. Now, of course, we didn't have it locked, so you could say, hey, that's the player's fault, but I think this just isn't intuitive. A separate issue that I'll show you in a moment, there are no client-bound packets to update this screen. So that means if something changes on the server, if I was connected to a dedicated server, we would still see peaceful, or we would still see hard if it changed on the server side. So that's both of these. Dedicated server operators can make all monsters despawning unintentionally with the world options screen, and the world options menu does not display or update properly for clients connected to dedicated servers. We're in world options screen, we see the method create difficulty buttons. We see it's a button that cycles through different values. If we hover over create, we can see the last parameter is the value change listener, and this is sending a packet every time you click the button. So we see this is server bound. If we search for the end of this, change difficulty packet, we do see a client bound one, and we can go to the usages. We don't see world options screen. We don't see it being used by a button somehow. Inside client packet listener though, all we see is that it updates the local data. So it sets the difficulty, and it sets whether the difficulty is locked. If we want to fix this, the first issue we'll see is that the done button just closes the screen. So they know and expect that this screen will instantly update values. The original logic here just sets the screen back to the last one. So that would just take you back to options. On top of this, let's track a new difficulty. We'll call this pending difficulty. And in the constructor here, we're going to get our local instance of Minecraft. We're going to make sure we're connected to a level first and then get the current difficulty. Since we're using a screen, we can just do this.minecraft. We're going to go back down to create difficulty buttons. We're going to modify some of this here. Instead of sending a packet anytime we click the button, we're going to update the pending difficulty to that value. And instead of closing the screen instantly, we're going to expand this a little bit. We can check this.pending not equal to this.minecraft level get difficulty. Then we can paste in what we commented out earlier and change this to this.pending, using parentheses. So I'm in world options again, and I should be able to click this and cycle through it without seeing the zombies disappear. So I'm clicking through this, nothing's happening, put it on peaceful. Now I click done, we see the zombies disappeared in the background. And if you do /difficulty, it's like a query, it tells you the difficulty you're on. So this is straightforward, but a little bit of a tedious fix. I want to give a sincere thank you to the channel members. You guys do help make this content possible, as well as everyone who watches this, as well as everyone watching, liking, and subscribing the videos. I also want to give a shout out to Solace. It's hard to search for a specific comment, but they've given a lot of useful tips. I do have a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about, maybe ask you about as an audience member. Mainly like what other content do you want to see? I plan on joining/creating a Homestead SMP soon. I joined a Discord server for it. We're starting a new one, still gathering members, still talking about it internally. But there's also single player gameplay. Like I really love all the mods. I would play that by myself all day long, but it's still something I'm interested in doing. We also have the topic of Hightail. Do you want to see bugs in their server jar, which is written in Java? Or do you want tutorials on creating plugins, new entity components, new components in general? I want to know your thoughts. Now, this is something a little bit more serious that I think I've wanted to bring up for a moment, but I wasn't sure if I needed to talk about it, but I am getting a couple of comments like this. It's two sides of the same coin. Larby here says, the bugs aren't intentional. The devs are doing a pretty good job despite how quickly they're working on things. Now that we're obfuscated, the community can find bugs faster, and we need to remember that they're humans and mistakes can happen. So next, I'm going to play this video that I was going to release separately, but it really felt too short to do on its own, so I'm just adding it to the end of this because it kind of falls in line with the series anyway. I'm going to read through Persona's comment here, and at the end, give a little of my own opinion. So I just got this massive wall of text, and we're going to read through it, but first, I don't want any negativity coming from my videos to go towards Mojang, from people viewing my videos to go hate on Mojang. I don't want y'all to go spam anybody. That is not the goal. And I'm going to put up another comment. This is meant to be a lighthearted series, not just for professional courtesy, just because this is YouTube. This is supposed to be lighthearted. It's not supposed to be like a super serious thing. And like I've said before, I'm not super experienced, so my opinion doesn't have a ton of weight, and my fixes are not good fixes. Persona Strikers is saying, I don't care what anybody says at this point. I really don't. I don't care what million sub-streamer wants to still defend Mojang. Mojang is either lazy or worse, incompetent. They are simply a badly structured company. If someone still defends them, they are simply ignorant and they want to live in an alternate reality. So many YouTubers with millions of subs just being straight up bootlickers of Mojang, not because they are affiliated, but because it's the mature thing to do. Mojang is literally pushing out snapshots filled with bugs, not because they overlooked it, but because they didn't even bother checking for it in the first place. The community will tell. I'm watching these unobfuscated videos, and even with minimum coding knowledge, I can tell most of these bugs are the result of bad coding. I understand they are rewriting a lot of code in the background, but even that's no excuse for the new features being buggy. These shouldn't be snapshot. These should be internal early test versions. Snapshots should remain for the community to look for the super extreme edge cases that might cause bugs, not that simply sitting down a dog makes a bug. They are putting in minimum effort. They really are. So I mostly agree with Larby. If you've never worked on a large code base, if you've never worked with other developers, pretty easy to not understand. But if there's 40 other people and each person's touching like 200 files during a code sprint, then yeah, small things are gonna get messed up and overlooked. And most of the bugs that I'm covering are pretty small things. Like, yeah, it's a model flip. It's not a game-breaking bug. And that's the main thing they're looking for in their process is game-breaking bugs. I know it's a really short take. Minecraft is old as dirt. They had a lot of time to rework everything. They've changed a lot already. And in the process, a couple of things get overlooked. The game is still evolving internally. Regular players might see a couple of blocks, a new entity here and there. In the background, we're getting new systems for lighting, and more things are becoming data-driven. The code's now unobfuscated. So all I have to say is, thanks for watching.